Economics deals analysis is important to determine the level of development that a country has achieved. There are two ways to study and analyze the economy in microeconomics and macroeconomics approaches. The behavior of consumer and producer in the market is a central concern in microeconomics. The concept of demand. Demand refers to the number of goods and services consumers are willing and able to buy at an alternative prices at a given period of time. It is the capacity and the willingness of a consumer in buying certain products determined in the demand. It is necessary that these two characteristics should prevail at the same time in order to determine the demand of a person. Price affects the demand of the consumers. So the relationship of price and demand can be described in various ways. First is the demand function. First is what we call the demand function. Okay, so there, the demand function. A demand function is a mathematical expression of relationship of two variables, quantity demand and also price, QD and P. Okay, so quantity demand is the dependent variable and our price is the independent variable. So QD changes as price also changes. So let's have this what we called our demand function. QD is equals to 200 minus 10P. Assuming that 200 is the quantity of the product which the consumer does not want to buy because the price is so high. For example, at 20 pesos. So at the price of 20 pesos, QD is equals to 200 minus 10 times 20, which is the price. That would be 200 minus 200. Quantity demand would be 0. That means that if the price is 20, demand would be 0. Nobody would buy the product or that kind of service. So what does the demand function say? A consumer will only buy the product if the price is lower than 20. So the price is lower than 20, so I will buy that product. So the value of 10P shows change in quantity demand. So the negative sign indicates the inverse relationship between quantity demand and price. So there is that negative 10P. So that means that there is an indirect or what we call an inverse relationship of the two variable. So the price of a pineapple, example, is 20 pesos. Quantity demand is 0. So the price becomes 18. So quantity demand is 20 pieces. Substitute the price, 20 with 18 in the P, then respectively to get that certain quantity demanded. Okay, so like for example, here, you can see it here. So quantity demand is equal to 200 minus 10P. So what happened is we replace it to 18. So there 200 minus 180, and that is now our quantity demand is equals to 20. So what does it show? So the demand function shows clearly the inverse relationship of quantity demand and price of a certain product. So that it shows that there is what they call an inverse relationship of the two variables. Now, demand schedule. So this is what we call our demand schedule. Okay, so this is our demand schedule. So it is a table showing the units of the product which the consumer is willing and able to buy at different prices. It shows the inverse relationship of the two variables, quantity demand and price. So as you can see, as quantity demand from 0 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 160. So quantity demand. So the price also, what happened? No, the price decreases 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 4. That means that as the price decreases, quantity demand also increases. So that means that the two variables, quantity demand and price, are indirectly or negatively related. There is a negative relation or an indirect relation of these two variables. So note, whenever or whatever is given to QD or P, you can complete the demand schedule with the use of the demand function. So with the use of the demand function, no, you can compute, you can solve, no, the demand or the whatever is the price or the demand or quantity demand. So you will notice on the table, as price increases, the willingness of the consumer to buy the product, which is pineapple, decreases. So if all other factors remain constant. When we say all other factors remain constant, that is what we call ceteris paribus assumption. So we call it as the ceteris paribus assumption. So which means other things remain constant. So after the demand schedule, we have what we called as the demand curve. Okay? So the demand curve is a graphical representation of inverse relationship of price and quantity demanded. It uses the rectangular coordinate system of René Descartes, or it is also called as the Cartesian plane, which uses the positive quadrant. So the positive quadrant of the Cartesian plane. So there are two axes. We have the x-axis and the y-axis. So in our x-axis, this is what we call our quantity demand, while our y-axis is our price. So that is quantity demand here, okay? And the y-axis is the price. So demand curve of a pineapple. So the demand curve shows that at 20 pesos, consumers are not willing, no, to buy the product. So the price of 20. So this is 20. So the price of 20, consumers are not willing and able to buy that product. The quantity demand is 0. But as price decreases from 18, consumers now are willing not to buy it. By 20, 16 becomes 40, 14 becomes 60, 12 becomes 80, okay? So on and so forth. Okay, so that is the idea that as price will decrease, quantity demand increases. So as price decreases, quantity demand of that pineapple increases. Note, demand curve shows downward sloping line. So that is a downward sloping line. You can see, no, downward sloping line. Downward sloping line. So that is a downward sloping line. So as prices, no, increases or decreases, the quantity demand also increases. Okay, so which signifies again the inverse relationship of the two variables, quantity demand and price. So there. So as price increases, the quantity demand decreases, assuming all things remain constant. So that is emphasized with our demand curve. So the demand curve is downward sloping, no, because of the inverse relationship of the variable. Okay, so what is the law of demand? The law of demand, as the price of the commodity increases, the quantity of the commodity which the buyer is willing to buy will be lesser. And if the price of the commodity decreases, the buyer is willing to buy greater quantity of product. Clearly states that the inverse relationship of price and quantity demand of the product by the consumer. So that's the point. Now, that is what we call the law of demand. So what are the factors that determines demand? Now, what are these what we call factors that determines the demand? So factors that affect demand is price. But price is not the only one that affects demand. There are other factors that would shift the demand going to the right or going to the left. So there are other factors that could shift the demand to the right, to the left. But when we talk about price, the price will just move to the quantity demand, going up or going down. So because of price. But the one that could shift or change the quantity demand going to the left to the right, it is called determinants. So determinants. So first determinant is what we call income. So the first determinant is income. So in determining demand, the income of an individual plays a significant role. If a consumer receives higher income, he is capable of buying more products even if the price is the same. For example, so a person and his family only consume 1/2 kilo of pork because the income is insufficient. But when income increased, they will be able to buy 1 or more than 2 kilos of pork for the family. This situation shows an increase in demand as income increases goods for which the demand increases as income increases. So are called normal goods. The goods for which the demand does not increase even when the income increases are called inferior goods. The increase in the demand of an individual is due to income increases even if there is no change in price. So that's the income. The more income you will have, you can now buy goods which are expensive. Next, aside from income, is what we call occasion. Okay? So aside from income is occasion. So it is natural to celebrate every important events and occasions, especially to the Filipinos, whenever there is celebration, fiestas, and others. So we increase our demand for products which are used for those occasions. Maybe chocolates and flowers during the time of Valentine's, jewelry, dresses, shoes, fruits, and appliances during Christmas time, and notebooks, pencil, bags, and school uniforms during school opening and the start of classes. Okay, so that's occasion. Next is what we call preference. Preference or consumer's choice. So change in taste and preference for a particular product affects demand for products. The demand for imported goods is high because many Filipinos prefer to buy them. Advertisements influence consumers' taste. For example, only a few consumers bought a new brand of bags that entered in the market, but it will be patronized and its demand will increase after it has been advertised. Okay? Like a cell phone or like a laptop that you have. So if it will be advertised, then people will buy that kind of product. So there. So preference, that is our choice. So we choose, but there are products that imposed by some big companies, They promote what they call creative ones or one creation by telling you not that this product is very important to you. Okay? So that's it. The next is population. Okay? So as population increases, the number of potential consumers will also increase. So the demand for commodities may also increase. For example, the Reyes family has 4 members. They consume 5 kilos of rice for a week. But when the family increased its members to 10, they can consume 15 kilos of rice for a week. So as the family members increases, the demand for products also increases. In a broader perspective, an increase in the number of consumers as a result of an increased population consequently pushes up the demand for goods and services. That means that as more people, more people, so there will be more potential consumers, more potential buyers of the product. So there will be more demand. Okay? Then next is expectations. So when a consumer hears about discord or trouble that is happening in some parts of the country or even around the world, or if calamities occur, he assumes that the economy will be affected. Shortage of products and price increases will occur, so people resort to panic buying. Individuals with enough money often react to this kind of situation wherein they will buy more of the products because they expect to have price increase. So demand for that particular product will also increase. Okay? So that's it. During the first month to second month of pandemic, there is a big problem with regards to alcohol. No, so people expect of those things that might happen. So there is a panic buying or was a panic buying of that sa mga alcohols. Okay, the next is what they call price of related products. Okay, price of related products. So price of substitute or complementary product. That's it. So when the price of one commodity increases, the demand for it will also decrease. This depends on the classification of goods. So there are what they call substitute goods, okay, which a person can buy in a place of other goods. If the price of chicken increases, consumers will look for a replacement like fish, pork. So the demand for fish or pork will increase. On the other hand, there are complementary goods that are consumed simultaneously. For example, coffee and sugar are complementary as well as bread and butter. If the price of bread increases, the demand for it as well as for butter also decreases. So the effect of change in price. So in the good is also felt in its complement. So that's it. That's why when you talk about price of related products, it also give emphasis to complementary goods. If the complementary good bread becomes expensive, then the demand for butter will become lesser. Okay? So there are also what they call substitutes like Coke and Pepsi. So if Pepsi will become expensive, then people might buy Coke. If Coke will be expensive, then people will buy more of the Pepsi. So change in price and the demand curve. So note price has a significant effect on demand. So price has a significant effect on demand. This can be shown in the demand curve. Changes in price results to changes in quantity demanded. It can be shown in the movement of the curve, which all other things remain constant. So if all other things remain constant, so only here, so if this is our demand curve, so if there is changes in price, the quantity demand, the point will just change, going either it will go up or it will go down. So there, it will just change. The point will just change. It is because of the price. But if the determinants, will take effect, the determinants of demand, then there is a possibility that demand will shift to the right. So this is what they call the movement is what they call shift. Okay, so it will shift to the right, or it will shift to the left. So the shift of the demand curve from right to left or vice versa shows the change in demand. So there, if it's only price, it is only change of quantity demand. But if it's determinant, there will be shift of the demand curve. So a change in the demand curve may also happen even if there are no changes in price. Okay, so but there is what they call there are what they call determinants that could influence on the shifting of the demand curve. So there are determinants that will influence the shifting of the demand curve. So when the demand curve shifts to the right from D1 to D2, this shows the increase in demand caused by different factors, even when the price is constant, which is illustrated in the graph. You can see in the graph. So the factors that can shift the demand curve in the right is there is increase in income. So these are factors that would shift the demand going to the right. Increase in income, product preference, expectation and speculation, increase in the number of consumers, celebration or occasion, then price decrease of a complementary good. Okay, so now another one is what they call from left or from right to left. So from right to left. So first is what they call from left going to the right. So now it's from right to decrease in income, price increase of complementary goods. Then consumers do not speculate about prices or price increase. Decreased number of consumer. Then price decrease of a substitute goods. So there. So what is elasticity? So it is easy to say that demand of an individual changes as the price increases or decreases. But what is important is to measure the degree of responsiveness of the changes in the demand for a product relative to changes in price. This is called elasticity. First is what they call elastic. What do you mean by elastic? The response quantity demanded in every percent change in a price is considered elastic. When the value is more than 1, what does it mean? For every 1% change in price, quantity demanded will decrease by more than 1%. For example, if the price of soft drinks increases by 1%, consumers will decrease the demand for soft drinks by more than 1% and look for alternatives like fruit juice or mineral water. Consumers can be altered when the products have many substitutes of soft drinks. So it is expensive. He will buy juice, sagot gulaman, or just potable water to quench his thirst. If a hamburger sandwich costs more, just buy a hot dog, sandwich, tuna, sandwich, or biscuit. Aside from products with many substitutes, a consumer can decrease his demand for non-essential goods like cosmetics and perfume. This kind of elasticity can be shown graphically. No, so in that certain graph. No, so that kind of elasticity, will look like this. Okay, in that graph. Okay, so this is the elasticity. So if this is your what they call graph, this is your quantity and this is your price, elastic will look like that. So that is elastic. So if your graph looks like this, okay, so that is elastic. Okay, So that would be elastic demand. Now, inelastic. Okay, so what is inelastic? The value of less than 1%, an inelastic demand, consumers' response is less than the price change. A price increase is 1%. The demand of the consumer decreases by less than 1%. Consumers have no capacity to decrease more his demand even if there is a price increase. This kind of consumer response shows that the product is necessary and there are no ready substitutes for products like rice, sugar, services of Meralco for water, or Maynilad, or here in Bohol we have Buheco, Boholite, and Bohol Waters. Okay, so the graph of inelastic now will also look like this. This is the graph of inelastic demand. Okay, so it looks like that. Okay, so that is the graph. Okay, so there. Next is what we call the unitary. Okay, next is unitary. Unitary is the response of consumer to price change. That is called unitary. When the value of quantity demanded and the change in price is equal to the 1%, this means the demand will decrease by 1%. When there is 1% price increase, this kind of response is present among products such as candies, junk foods, beverages, children's accessories, and others. Okay, so the graph of unitary will look like this. Okay, so this is unitary. Okay, unitary demand. The producer's behavior are examined through supply. It is important to know how the producers react in every price increase or decrease. Supply represents the amount of goods and services available for consumption at different price. The producers and sellers are considered as suppliers. So producers and our sellers are considered as suppliers. So are they willing, no, to sell their product at a certain price? Okay? So there. So supply refer to the quantity of goods and services which the supplier is willing and able to sell in an alternative prices. So that is the idea of supply at a period or a given time period. So supply is also affected by price because price is the independent variable while quantity supply is dependent variable. So first, this certain relationship of price and quantity of supply can be illustrated in various ways. So first, we have what we call as the supply function. First is we have the supply function. Quantity supply is equals to negative 500 plus 50p. So this is our supply function. Okay. So let's have first here our x variable is QS is the dependent variable while still P is our independent variable. Okay. So the negative 500 is the quantity which the supplier does not want to sell at a price lower than 10. Negative sign explains that why suppliers refuse to supply the product at a price of 10. Okay, so positive sign shows the relationship of price and supply, which is positively related. So there is what we call direct relationship between price and supply. So if the price increase, the supplier is willing to increase the supply of his product. So that is the reality, no? If price increases, so of course the supplier is also willing not to sell more of the product, because remember, the supplier's intention, his motive is to earn more profit. If price increase, that means that there will be more profit of that product. Okay, so next, another thing not to understand more about supply is what they call the supply schedule. Okay, so we have the supply schedule. So this table that we can see here shows what they call the supply schedule. It shows that the supply increases, supply increases, as also price continually or continuously increasing. So the producer is motivated to sell more when the price is high, assuming all others remain constant. So there, as our quantity supply increase from 0 to 1,000, price also increase from 10 to 30. So a producer is willing and able to sell his product if the price will increase. So the price will increase, so they are willing and able to sell the product. Okay? So now, next is what they call the supply curve. So supply curve is a graphic representation. So it's a graphic representation, graphical. Okay. So it is if the given data in the supply schedule is put into the graph, then we can have the supply curve. Can be formed. A supply curve refers to the graphic representation of a direct relationship of price and quantity of products. So the direct relationship of price, that means that the demand or the supply curve going up. So there. So because of that relationship, there is positive relation of the two variables. So there are two axes in the graph, the vertical and the horizontal axis. So again, we have here the x-axis, which is our QS, and the y-axis, which is our price. Okay, so the x and the y-axis. So for that, we plot the data which is found above. So we use this data, so from QS, and then we plot it here. So in our what they call supply curve. So we plot it there in our supply curve. So now, what is the law of supply? What do you mean by the law of supply? So the law of supply states that when the price of product is high, producers are willing to sell more. But if the price is low, producers tend to decrease the supply, assuming all other things remain constant. So the law of supply shows that price increases serves as incentives, incentives to the seller, to the supplier, to supply more of that product. So that would serve as their incentives. They will be motivated to create more. Many producers supply products at high prices. So lots of producers will only supply product if the price is high. Price and supply have direct relationship. So in a supply function, price and quantity supply, there is what they call direct relationship. So there is a direct relationship of the two variables, which shows that the curve will look like that. So going up. So the curve goes like that. Okay? So the curve. Unlike in demand, that the curve will go like that. So in demand. So the curve of demand will look like that. But in supply, so the curve is going up. So that is the curve in supply. Okay. So what are these factors that affects supply? What are the factors that would affect no our market supply? What are these factors? Okay. So first factor is, we call it as technology. So first factor is technology. Okay. Technology is the first factor. The use of modern machineries and technical knowledge in the production of goods and services help the producers provide sufficient supply in the market. Modern machineries speed up production processes and increase output. So the more or there is modern machineries, it will increase output that will shift the supply going to the right. Next is what they call expectations. Another one is expectations. Okay. So expectations. Producers also expect and sometimes speculate about the price increase. While doing so, they decrease the supply of the product, which may cause shortage in the market. So their expectations. So by speculating, they are going to decrease the supply of the product. Then we will experience what they call shortage. The number of sellers is a determinant of the abundant supply of a product in the market. If the product is in season like fruits, sellers of this kind of fruits are everywhere, so there is a surplus in the supply of that particular product. If there is a new product, many sellers wants to offer it. Okay? Then next is cost. So that is emphasized as the cost of production. So producers take into consideration the cost of producing the product or goods and services. So they would like to supply in the market. So in the production of goods, producers have to pay the production cost and other expenses like tax. Okay, so tax is a collection or a compulsory contribution imposed by the government to individuals and business firms. When the tax rate increases, it will be an additional cost for the businessmen. So if the production cost is high, producers and businessmen lower their production, which will cause a decrease in the availability of the supply in the market. So that's it, cost. So price of related products. Sellers are motivated to sell the products if the price is high. We can observe that if the price of oranges is higher than the apples, sellers will sell oranges rather than apples. The result is supply of orange will increase and for apples, it will decrease. Subsidy. Okay? The subsidy. So that's it. So subsidy, this refers to the assistance provided by the government, especially now that our gasoline increases. So the government will have to subsidize some of the gasolines of the public utility jeepneys. Okay? So there, it's an assistance not to the small-scale businessmen and farmers to enable them to produce more products. Some of the subsidies given to the farmers are selling fertilizers and pesticides at lower prices, loan with low interest rate, and in buying imported machineries, which are all necessary in improving the farming techniques. Okay, so that's it. We have subsidy. Next is weather and climate. Okay, so weather and also climate. Weather conditions affects the production of goods and services, especially the agricultural products. If the climate of weather fits the needs of the products or producers, sufficient supply is guaranteed to flow to the market. Calamities such as typhoons, heavy rains, floods, and excessive heat affect production of farm crops, resulting in the decrease of supply. Okay, so you can see here our supply curve, no, from S1 to S2. Okay, so there. So our S1 shifts going to the right. No, it shifts to the right. Okay. So what are the factors why it shifts to the right? We have use of efficient technology. Okay. Subsidy on the expenditures of the producer. Increase in the number of sellers. Increase the price of related products. So there is what they call from S1 to S2, it shifts. Next is from S1 to S2 going to the left, shifts to the left, this one. What are the primary factor? Lack of efficient technology. So walang technology, hindi gumagamit ng modern technology. There is calamities, lack of subsidy, decrease in the number of sellers, low prices of related products. Okay? So, there. And that is the main point. Okay, so what is the idea, no, of supply elasticity? No, the price elasticity of supply measures the responsiveness of the producer or sellers in the price change. Okay, so as you can see here, first the graph here is what they call elastic supply. So even the price increases, the consumer will still buy the product because the product is what they call basic commodities. So the product are basic commodities. So in an inelastic, so here, so going up like that, this is the graph of inelastic. So changes in prices does not result in an equivalent change in the supply because the product has many substitutes. So this is not a basic commodity. So the answer is less than 1. So when we say less than 1, that is 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.678. So less than 1. Okay, then we have unitary. So unitary, when a producer is willing to sell the product at a specific price, no? So, and the value is equal to 1, that is unitary. So the graph of unitary looks like this. Okay? Oh, graph of unitary will look like that. Okay, so inelastic there, sa inelastic, and then sa elastic will look like this. Okay, so that is what they call the graph, no, of elasticity of supply.